Hello everybody and welcome back to World of Warships with Wadres, and for today's video we will be taking a look at the Tier 4 early access German aircraft carrier, the Rhein. And one of the things that I do want to say off the bat is, at least with the first couple of tiers of German aircraft carriers, I believe it's the Tier 4 and the Tier 6, the Weser, one of the things that these aircraft carriers are supposed to boast is a faster aircraft speed. I think that comes in more with the higher tiers than it does with the lower tiers. The lower tiers actually seem about on par with their equal tier counterparts, the Ranger and the Ranger, Bogue, Langley, whichever other iterations are currently in play at the moment. So I think that is going to be more of a high-tier trait for these aircraft carriers than it is a low-tier trait. Now, one of the things that I do want to say right off the bat is these rocket attack aircraft are very, very unusual. Unlike most other rocket attack planes, they don't really maintain altitude as they go in for their attack run. They actually drop to a slightly lower attack altitude with a more perpendicular attack angle to whatever ship they're going after. That does lead to greater potential for hitting those nice flat citadels with your armor-piercing rockets, because yes, German aircraft carriers do get the armor-piercing rockets. But the one thing that I do wish to note is that the fears that people have had regarding these rockets are kinda, I guess I should say, unwarranted. Because what I'm seeing with these rockets is that they're actually even though they are armor-piercing rockets and they do cut into the ships and do some decent damage, they are still low damage. I mean, I got one citadel on the Danai, and I amassed a little more than 2,000 damage between that and my attack run on the Gusano. So these rockets, while they are armor-piercing, they really aren't as phenomenal as people might think they would have been. So they're definitely not game-breaking or game-ending for any light cruiser or heavy cruiser that these rocket attack planes happen to get a bead on. So, to that regard, just kind of be careful with your rocket attack planes, because you're gonna do some underwhelming damage with them, let me put it that way. The same goes for the torpedoes. Now, one nice thing about the torpedoes for these ships is that they are very, very quick torpedoes for airdrops. But again, as is a noted trait for these aircraft carriers, while they are nice, fast torpedoes that are difficult to dodge, they are low damage torpedoes to compensate for that, I guess, lack of dodgeability. So just be willing and ready to do a few extra runs on just about any target before you really get anywhere damage-wise. Now, I am doing pretty decent against the Svetlana and the other ships in this match. This is basically straight Tier 4 matchmaking, which is about where the Rhein shines very well. If she gets up-tiered at all, she does kind of suffer just a little bit, just due to more the low survivability of her aircraft than anything else. And while we're at it, let's talk about these dive bombers. First off, you can see me adjusting my angle, trying to figure out where my targeting reticle actually was. But once I found it, it was really pretty easy. And I'm even going to go so far as to say that these dive bombs are probably the most effective AP dive bombs that exist in the game currently, by my experience. And I say that precisely because of the steep dive angle of these bombers. These bombs basically go straight down. It is exceptionally easy to hit a heavy or a heavy cruiser or battleship for substantial amounts of citadel damage with these dive bombers. And these dive bombers, at tier 4, they don't hurt quite as much as you would think. But, I mean, taking a citadel is still taking a citadel. It's damage that you can't really repair back. And, again, they're AP bombs. It's still damage you can't really repair back. So, it is a very, very effective weapon of choice for this aircraft carrier. In fact, in some cases, even more so than your torpedoes or rocket attack planes. If anything, the rocket attack planes and the torpedo bombers are best used for disabling targets, and then basically coming back around after them with your AP bombs once they're either immobilized or slowed down, lending to greater accuracy of your dive bomb attacks. Now, of course, it is possible to still get flooding damage and everything with these torpedoes, but I think the flood chance is reduced. I could be wrong. But it does kind of make things a little bit trickier when trying to just deal with heavier targets. And that is why these AP bombs especially are so effective. Now, at tier 4, the AP bombs, I believe, only do a maximum of like 4,400 damage. It's really nothing stellar. But again, at tier 4, you're not exactly dealing with the world's biggest HP pools for battleships or cruisers either. So, I mean, they'll hit, they'll hurt, but just like the torpedo bombers or the rocket attack aircraft, basically don't expect to do earth-shattering amounts of damage every single run. It's just plain not going to happen. Now, the one thing that I am going to say as well in regards to these dive bombers, especially more due to their efficacy than anything else, in some regards, I think this is actually what dive bombers should have been in their initial iterations with the aircraft carrier rework when they brought in the whole basically controlling the aircraft dynamic with the Japanese and US aircraft carriers. And part of why I say that is because if dive bombers had worked with this same level of utility, and in a lot of ways, the way these dive bombers work is actually the way historical engagements would have occurred with dive bombers. Quite simply, it's just more effective. It is... I don't know why Wargaming decided to have the... For example, the American and Japanese bombers suddenly have to go from a level flight to a steep climb and then dive. Normally they would be starting out pretty much at altitude and diving straight down. So I don't know what Wargaming was thinking when they did that. I think if they had done with them what they have done with the German aircraft carrier dive bombers from the beginning, people would be at least a little bit happier with the way aircraft carriers have turned out, especially aircraft carrier players, because it is a much more, I guess I could say, user-friendly mechanic, and it does make them more effective. Now, granted, in order to compensate for it, they would probably need to, say, nerf the AP damage of the Japanese AP bombs, or maybe nerf the fire chance or the damage caused by American HE bombs. But again, I think the overall mechanic for the dive bombs of the German line is substantially more effective. I have gotten more citadels hitting already in Rhein or Weser even, because I do have the Weser and I'm going to be talking about her in another video, than I have with any other AP dive bombers to date, including those of the Graf Zeppelin, I might add. So, substantially more effective, if I'm being perfectly honest. And if, again, aircraft carriers had this kind of dive bomb mechanic from the very beginning, it would have been incredible. It would have been much, much better, I think, as far as a release for the aircraft carrier rework. I'm still not a huge fan of the aircraft carrier rework, mind you, but, well, we're not exactly going to be backtracking on that now, are we? So, living with it as best I can. I think it is a fair statement to say that I'm probably the only player in my clan at the moment who actually even touches aircraft carriers at all. And that's more just to keep myself fresh on them for the hell of it. I enjoy playing the game, and that means enjoying trying to play all aspects of it. And I think, again, that if this mechanic were given to American or Japanese dive bombers, they would be substantially more effective. As it is, I firmly believe that the American and Japanese dive bombers rely more on the torpedo damage than really just about anything else, just due to the sheer, I guess, difficulty of getting the Japanese dive bombs to actually penetrate properly. And while the American HE bombs do substantial amounts of damage, you really have to rely on the fact that you're using them on either difficult to hit targets or targets that can basically heal back everything that those bombs do. So, yeah, there is that to be said. Now, something else that I should probably mention in regards to this aircraft carrier is the simple fact that she does have secondary batteries, and they can be rather effective. However, you do have to keep in mind that she only has 2 gun mounts. So while they are decent secondaries, at least for an aircraft carrier at Tier 4, they're certainly better than anything just about any of the other aircraft carriers have at Tier 4. They are still pretty lackluster for the most part. You're not going to be holding off destroyers or doing long-range damage to cruisers. They are still pretty short range, about 5-ish kilometers even with appropriate captain skills selected. So they're really very close in self-defense still. They're not supplementary offensive weaponry at this point. So just kind of keep that in mind. And in fact, the match that you're watching in the background is going to be a pretty good showcase of what I'm talking about, because there is going to be one point where a enemy destroyer just kind of gets a little too close for comfort, and it's going to it's going to get away with it because, again, the secondaries just aren't that effective at dealing with it, again, because you've only got 2 guns, and it is Tier 4. So just kind of keep that in the back of your minds. Now, one other thing that I do want to state in regards to the match that you are watching is this is going to be a pretty roller coaster match right up until the end, and it is going to be a very drawn out match. As a result, this is actually going to be the last match I show in this review, simply due to the overall length of this particular battle. And you'll understand why as the match drags on. And you can also look at it to see the mistakes that I make and everything else that lead to the result. And I do want to say straight out that there are some critical decisions that I do make over the course of this match that actually, one, help me, and in one particular case, hurt me. And the one that hurts me is the one that actually costs me the match. Yes, I will say straight up, this match ends in a defeat. And I will let you all figure out exactly where those decisions were made and which decisions were the most costly or effective. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as you're watching this match, because this was a phenomenal match. And again, one single decision, cost me basically everything as far as the outcome of this match. So kind of just, again, watch closely and take note, because these aircraft carriers are very capable, under the right circumstances, of carrying, and I do mean straight up carrying a match, and I'm going to prove that here in this particular battle that you're watching. So hang on and be ready for the ride. Now, obviously, first off, I went for easy targets. Svetlana was a nice, heavy Soviet cruiser to go for, easy to citadel, and I took it out pretty easily. Now I'm trying to focus on this Marblehead. And, well, let's just say these dive bombs really, really suffer against lightly armored cruisers. Expect to see a lot of overpens when you're attacking light cruisers with these AP bombs. They basically just kind of go straight through the ship without really arming. So, lots of very light or minimal damage to basically anything. Now, that does, however, mean that anything that you attack with this ship's aircraft, unless you're going after them with torpedoes, you're pretty much just going to expect low damage rolls. And that's primarily because, again, a lot of this is armor-piercing rounds. Armor-piercing rockets, armor-piercing bombs. These are designed to attack heavily armored targets, or basically just kind of hit even lightly armored targets with basically bug bites. You're not doing an incredible amount of damage to lightly armored targets because everything you're shooting at them, with exception of torpedoes, is basically just going straight through them. There is little chance to actually hit citadels on something as lightly armored as a Marblehead with AP bombs. Again, the bombs just basically go straight through the hull and do minimal damage at best. The same goes for the rocket attack planes. If you choose to use your rocket attack planes to go after, say, a destroyer, you're basically just going to keep chipping away at it for several minutes because you're doing maybe 200 or 300 damage at a round, just due to the simple fact that these rockets really don't do anything spectacular. So just be wary of that when you are using these aircraft carriers. These are meant specifically for countering heavier targets like heavy cruisers or battleships. Now, the rocket attack planes are somewhat viable against light cruisers because I do believe these rockets have a short enough arming fuse to do something about at least light cruiser armor. But if you're going after destroyers, these rockets are basically worthless. The only thing that those rockets are really good for is if you're the last thing on the map and you've got nothing else that you can really use effectively. And you can see that I'm trying to get myself lined up on this Marblehead and just really not seeing too much. I did land one nice solid citadel right there, which after all the time that I've actually been going after this Marblehead, the fact that I only got one citadel should tell you a lot about what these AP bombs are like as far as trying to do anything to lightly armored cruisers. I mean, hell, even that last attack run, still just a major over-penetration. It went pretty much straight through the ship. So, yeah. And right now, I am the last person on my team with 12 minutes to go, with 4 enemy ships left. So I've got a lot of work cut out for me. Well, okay, maybe not a lot, because the Britannia is burning, but I'm not going to take any chances. I want to kill secure that. I want to basically get it off the map. So, there it goes. Next up, I've got the Marblehead. Marblehead needs to be dealt with. Why? It is the next biggest threat. aside from the Nicholas, of course. But the Marblehead can do a lot more damage in a very short amount of time at range. So, yeah, Marblehead needs to die. And I do a reasonable job, I think, of focusing on it, trying to get it taken out. And this is one thing that I guess comes to things that players really actually dislike about aircraft carriers, where if an aircraft carrier decides that you need to die, you can focus them down pretty quickly under the right circumstances. Yeah, I want to put it in plain terms here. You're not going to do that as effectively as you might think with these German aircraft carriers. Again, as I've mentioned, these AP bombs, AP rockets, they are very difficult to utilize for really focusing down light targets like a Marblehead or a destroyer. So this is pretty much the worst scenario I could actually have ended up in as far as targets to fight. The Marblehead, I'm basically relying on my torpedoes to finish off, and I do finish it off with this torpedo run. But it took both of those torpedoes to sink it. If I had missed, I would have had to have hit it with a second round, while it would have had a perfectly good line of sight on me. And next up, we have this Nicholas, which is at close range. And you'll notice that I actually take direct control of my hull here for a few minutes, because I knew those torpedoes were coming. Once the torpedoes are past, I can pretty much go back to controlling aircraft or doing whatever I need to do to get it killed. But I was also kind of wanting to get a first perspective on what my secondary batteries were doing. And, well, needless to say, it's not much. Again, this is Tier 4. These secondaries really are not laser accurate or anything like that, at this tier at least. So, yeah. Still have a Nicholas to kill, and I've only got one capture point. So, 3 capture points. I'm more than half down on points by comparison to the enemy. And I've got a Nicholas and an aircraft carrier left to kill. And at this point, I'm thinking, I've got so little time to do basically anything in this match that I'm better off trying to capture than kill. Especially considering how long it is taking me to deal with this Nicholas. So, yeah. And of course, the Nicholas is trying to recapture D, which I had just finished capturing. So, any attention that I could have given to the aircraft carrier at this point in time, yeah, I'm focusing it on the Nicholas, because I'm trying to basically save my own skin here. And all I've got are AP bombs really to do it with, because I really don't believe I can rely on torpedoes, even with that phenomenal 60-knot torpedo speed, to be able to actually hit the Nicholas effectively. So I'm relying on what is potentially the most accurate weaponry I can, rockets and dive bombs, for minimal damage at best. Basically just to reset the capture on D so that I can keep moving. And right here, this is a critical decision point. You will now, earlier on, first critical decision was choosing to backtrack and capture D, because I saw where things were going. I saw that that my team was not doing a good job of handling the enemy. So I backed off and basically just started doing capture, basically running damage control. So now I'm trying to keep this capture that I had secured from flipping again, and I do succeed. However, I have gone straight through capture point, what is that, B, C? C. And I'm thinking that I don't really have the time to spend on capturing it. I need to work on capturing the others. I really wasn't thinking about how much time it was going to take me to do the other captures. And that is the critical point here that actually costs me this match. Instead of backtracking and capturing C, I instead decide to keep pushing forward to go into B and pursue the enemy aircraft carrier. And it is going to be that decision, that one decision to not capture C, that ends up costing me this match. Because once I get around to A, the enemy is actually already on like 990 something points. It's very close to winning on points there. And I apologize, it's going to be capture point B that I get around to. I'm actually coming around to capture point A and working on A as it is. So, yeah, if I had spent the time to finish the capture on C instead of passing straight through it, I would have been in substantially better position. But no, I had to pursue the aircraft carrier because I had two ways of winning. I had to kill the enemy aircraft carrier, which is the last ship on the map, and I will admit I thought I had more time than I did. But, again, the other option was to win by capping, or at least delay the enemy's win by taking over the caps, which would have granted me more time to take care of this Hermes. But, alas, I decided to pursue the carrier, try to kill it, not really secure the one capture point that basically made the difference, as it were, and it is going to be the decision that actually costs me this match. I will say that straight out. It costs me the win on this match. After basically all the work that I have put into to not lose this match, I might add. I mean, you can see the extensive amount of ribbons on the rack here. And that number is only going to get a little bit higher as this match kind of works into finalization. I also even get to the point where the enemy aircraft carrier doesn't even have a fighter squadron in the air. I basically get free reign of attacking this aircraft at the end of attacking this enemy CV at the end of the match. And again, it just gets completely blown by the fact that I passed straight through C, didn't secure the capture, and that just cost me a lot in the way of both points and time. And yes, I am still kind of beating myself up about that. The simple fact that I easily could have won this match. Easily. And because I did not secure a single capture point, I flubbed it. I lost it completely. So, yeah. And I mean, you can see the fact I'm working this aircraft carrier over pretty quickly. There are no real fighters defending it. I'm basically this enemy aircraft carrier is basically dead as soon as I can do enough damage to it. And I mean, I'm focusing on it with rocket attack planes. I'm focusing on it with dive bombers. And right here, the points tally ticks away, and I lose the match. With 2.5 minutes left where I could have easily, again, very easily killed that aircraft carrier. So, yeah. Anyway, that is my review for the Rhein. She is a very, very capable ship under the right circumstances. You have to basically run her to the wire in a lot of regards to make her incredibly, and I do mean incredibly, effective. But it is very possible, even for a Tier 4 aircraft carrier, to make a substantial difference in this battle. And again, the only reason this battle was lost was because of one critical decision on my part. So, there you have it. Now, to those of you who have actually watched this far in the video, I would like to apologize just slightly for not really getting video out last week, I believe. I don't think I actually got one out, and I want to clarify a little bit on that because last week, or actually week before last, late 2 weeks ago, family's water heater went out. So I've been trying to do, or I got involved in doing basically flood control down in our basement because the way the water heater decided to die was by leaking. So I kind of had to do flood control in our basement, and that also meant doing a number of other things, especially on my days off where I would have had time to do my videos. And so, yeah, that basically just kind of went out the window. There was also the simple fact that when the repair guy came out to replace our water heater, we have a whole house water filter system, and while the water was shut off and everything while he was installing the water heater, decided to replace the filter insert for the filter, and, well, the little valve that operates inside the filter decided to break. And this was this last Thursday, Friday, and that meant I had to basically do plumbing work, which, after spending half the day just downstairs making sure the guy was not needing any assistance or anything really down with the water heater, it resulted in me having to spend another 5 hours getting the materials and doing the plumbing work to basically restore water supply to the house. So yeah, that was not fun. On top of other things, last week we had a couple of kittens that were not doing very well, so that resulted in basically kind of keeping an eye on kittens for a little bit. And there was also my grandmother of 96 years old, passed away last Tuesday or Wednesday. Now, she lives down in Texas. I can't afford to fly down to her, and of course, if I fly down, Texas doesn't have any quarantine restrictions for travel, but coming back to the state of Pennsylvania would have been a 2-week quarantine. So, can't really get out there. Now, on that regard, if I don't sound too broken up about it, there are a couple of things to kind of mention there. My grandmother for the last several years is battling progressive dementia. So she's been having issues in that regard. My aunt has been taking care of her for an extensive amount of time, basically living in her home. In fact, she even did modifications to her house, extensions, things like that, so that my grandmother could live there and be cared for. And early this year, my grandmother was also diagnosed with a very aggressive intestinal cancer. And it was decided that she would not pursue any aggressive treatments or chemo or anything to try to treat it because of her age and the dementia. And, well, she succumbed last week, and the reason I don't sound too broken up about it is because it is a relief on my aunt, to not put too fine a point on it. It is a blessing in disguise. Anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Please do not forget to like and subscribe, and I hope to catch you all again later. Happy hunting, everybody.